Hello, welcome everyone. Namaste. Thank you for being here again today for yet another chapter, the next to last chapter actually, in this book of short stories called Thanks for the Yellow Roses. I will remind you, because of this particular story and the one that follows, there are a number of photographs, really lovely black and white photographs in it. You may want to see them firsthand for yourselves. I'm not peddling this book, I'm not pushing it, but if you're interested in photography along with storytelling, it's something you may want to do. It's really very inexpensive. So, the episode 10, chapter 10, is entitled On Pigeons and Other Important Matters. Oh boy, I can hear you saying this ought to be a dandy. Well, in a way, it is a dandy, and I hope you'll enjoy it. I want to tell you about making love, not about simply effing, but really about making love. There is a difference, a really big difference, or at least that can be so, depending on your perspective. I've written other things about making love, like over 350 poetic verses, all starting with making love is, and then finishing the statement. They're about the kind of loving that exudes some character. In every instance, one finds him or herself completely aware of current place and circumstance, totally present in the oneness that life simply and so beautifully is. Whenever I'm asked what I do for a living, I'm so taken by this truth that I often answer, "Oh, I just make love all day." But that is not today's story, and I could tell you the reactions of people when I have said that, but I think you already get the point. Actually, I came to the computer this morning prompted by an extraordinarily enjoyable and fulfilling reading of Anne Lamott's rendering on Writing and Living, Bird by Bird. No matter how I was moved or tickled, and there was a great deal of both as I invested in soul nourishment in the wee hours of this morning and the last, my mind kept taking back to a treasure of a story that she shared about her son, Sam. It goes like this. My son, Sam, at 3.5, had these keys to a set of plastic handcuffs, and one morning he intentionally locked himself out of the house. I was sitting on the couch reading the newspaper, and I heard him stick the plastic keys in the doorknob and try to open the door. Then I heard him say, "Oh, shit." My whole face widened like the guy in Edvard Munch's Scream. After a moment, I got up and opened the front door. "Honey," I said. "What did you just say?" I said, "Oh, shit," he said. "But honey, that's a naughty word. Both of us have absolutely got to stop using it, okay?" He hung his head for a moment, nodded and said, "Okay, Mommy." Then he leaned forward and asked confidently, "But can I tell you why I said, 'oh shit'?" "Sure, honey. Why?" Well, I said, "oh shit,' because the fucking keys won't work." Fantasy's keys won't get you in, for sure. I find this story delightful in its innocence, and it was the last line quoted that touches a space within me that made me realize that much of what we know and do about loving is based on fantasy. It was an inferential leap that got me here, but having made that leap in faith, I was propelled into the understanding that we are governed by all kinds of fantasies that keep us from loving as we are created to be. Actually, to even admit that we're love itself. It's fantasy's keys that have messed up our lives and our minds, for fantasies open the doors only to illusions, not truth. Illusions and not truth thus come to govern our lives. Years ago, Joni Mitchell wrote a haunting song about illusions, Both Sides Now. In it, she speaks about how love's illusions and life's illusions seem to have kept her from living her truth. If one were to listen closely to not so guarded conversation at social events, or even eavesdrop on conversations between friends, it would become abundantly clear and profoundly sad that sex and or making love are filled with illusions, and we're all guilty of perpetrating and perpetuating them into eternity. In the first place, lovemaking isn't simply about fornication. No matter how we say it isn't just simply about procreation. Nor is it simply about the rush we get while serving our infatuation to the fullest either. And it certainly isn't something only men like to do. It's something we all are. No, not effed up. Lovers. Each of us is created in the image and likeness of love. Our innate way of being that knows nothing but loving. For that is what love simply, perfectly, and infinitely is. That being the case then, our only real purpose in life, and the only thing therefore that will fulfill us, are acts of making love. Or, if it makes you feel better, acts of creating love. I say it this way for me, acts of being love, and only love. That's what makes us authentic. My experience, particularly with those financially less than fortunate, let us say, has been nothing but deep connectedness, a merging of souls at the most profound level. The resulting photographs have blessedly matched the sensitive exchange of loving energy that etches their images indelibly on the lining of my heart. It is with that anticipation that I traveled to San Miguel Allende, Mexico, and I was not disappointed. I want to share a story about how I came to appreciate even more the difference between making love and any reference you wish to make of it, and of being love. It's the story of two pigeons. Pigeons, you say? Have you gone mad? Really mad? No, quite the contrary. I really have been given the extraordinary opportunity to witness in the most tender and innocent way the act of being a lover, a real lover, of being love. In a real sense, it is a story about being loved through all, and it is shown to me stripped from the personal nature of my own life, so I could see it with a bit more objectivity than otherwise would be the case. A few months ago, I went on a photo trip to San Miguel Allende, Mexico. I had longed for that trip for over a year, for I have often had the good fortune to collaborate with these marvelously open and celebratory Mexican people in creating some stunning photographic imagery. One day, as I approached the end of this awe-inspiring photographic adventure, I was moved to give myself a treat as a special place for lunch. Contrary to the ecstasy I felt during the overwhelming majority of the collaborative adventures with my camera in hand, I was feeling low after having just photographed a lovely teenage schoolgirl, a portrait of seeming innocence, who immediately flung out her open palm on the end of her arm like a giant bullfrog's tongue, snapping out to catch a passing fly, expecting me to pay her. As fate would have it, deep in this self-created malaise, I looked up to get my bearings and found myself right in front of the restaurant I had had in mind, La Capilla, the chapel. As I passed from the well-swept cobblestone street to the finely chiseled stone entry, I was overwhelmed at the sight. A 2-story winding staircase, elegantly fastened to the side of the largest cathedral in town, entwined with the greenest ivy I had ever seen. The stone walls were fashioned into the same manner as the entry, and made for a startling demonstration of strength and power. Love seemed to be everywhere present in the context. As I headed toward the stairs, I noticed a large room off to the right, adorned in row after row after row, basket after basket after basket, of festively wrapped goodies, biscochitos, jams and jellies, and fancy chocolates, each a necessary evil for those who occasion La Capilla. I arranged to purchase several jars of exotic homemade jam, strawberry basil, pineapple raspberry, blueberry and peach, pear and cranberry, and another I can't recall, as has long since passed through my digestive system. Must be a Pisces thing. I can't buy just one jar of jam or only one plant to save my life. I arranged to have these treats wrapped for travel while I had lunch, and the young, dark-eyed woman with an infectious smile began the task immediately. I was so taken by the contrast of this image with my most recent photographic encounter that I asked if I might create the young lady's photo. Long ago I began a series of this kind, using the inexpensive throwaway cameras to photograph people with whom I felt some special bond. She quickly agreed, and I created our picture, a selfie as it were, beckoning her close enough so I could get both of us in the frame within an arm's length, hence the name of the series, within an arm's length. Immediately I began to feel my energy shift with this newfound imagery feeding my soul, and was completely uplifted by the time I climbed the winding staircase to bask in the view of the Jardin nestled in the surrounding architecture and landscape, embraced by the sound of tinkling wind chimes and babbling waterfall. A brilliant blue sky filled with billowy white clouds completed the picture of heaven on earth, a perfect setting for lunching on life's real gifts. It was about 1:30, and yet I was the only one there to enjoy that luxury. It perplexed me for a moment until I asked the waiter if lunch was indeed being served. He caught my ignorance in the matter and simply indicated it would be a while before others would be joining me. He was absolutely correct. The waiter and I shared this time and space for more than an hour with no one but each other. After ordering a quail salad, a continental-style fish dish, and a glass of Sauvignon Blanc, I settled in to read a book by Joel Goldsmith, a metaphysician and spiritual writer who extends Mary Baker Eddy's Christian Science healing beyond that norm by some distance. As I turned the pages to my bookmark, I heard an inner prompting to look over my left shoulder to the stone ledge that separated the two-story Spanish-style roof line from the furniture-filled rooms in the antique store below. Just as I looked over, two pigeons landed and strutted along the edge past one another, not particularly paying attention to each other, though. I watched for a moment and noticed that one was beginning to approach the other, and I intuitively knew I was about to witness the act. Seemingly without notice, one bird leaped on the backside of the other, did his thing in a flash, and leapt back off to the ledge. In a few seconds, he repeated the act in precisely the same fashion. I was tickled by this version of modern man and woman in an after-marriage clinch. Slam, bam, thank you, ma'am, as the all-too-familiar chauvinistic expression goes. Just like that. Land, do it. It's done and over with. After privately thanking these lovely creatures for allowing me to participate vicariously in their clutches, I returned to my book and chilled glass of wine, dripping with dew cast by the now warm, humid day on a nice cold goblet. Neither my reading nor wine sipping lasted very long, however. Just as I had been prompted the last time, I found myself returning to what I had decided was to become another kind of lesson for me. For nearly 45 minutes, mind you, these two beautiful creatures billed and cooed, strutted around and brushed against one another, poked here, poked there, gently nudging another wings, around the neck, beak to beak. It was the most extraordinary display of afterplay I have ever witnessed, despite my own preference for similar comforting under such conditions. I noticed that a few other diners had entered, and they seemed slow to glow in the wake of the beauty I had witnessed. As I prepared to leave, a man and woman at the next table caught my eye, and we exchanged a brief greeting. I am walking on a cloud and want to share this story with anyone who would listen, but decide to savor the occasion privately instead, filling my soul to overflowing with joy. The purpose of all this? Well, it could be to illustrate that making love simply isn't about effing at all, although making love certainly in some ways can include that. Making love is about what happens around the effing. On another level, this marvelous display of being lovers depicted what loving is all about, while at the same time putting the sex act into a wholesome perspective. Sex is but a natural act between lovers, an act not unlike pecking at food, flying from a ledge to another, like dropping a load of feces on someone's Easter bonnet in the bowels of the Jardin below. But it also is a necessary act, one that comes with simply being an animal or spiritual being, however you want to think about it. It's not something to withhold or talk down about. It simply is. It simply is. like life itself. And when we make nothing more of it than that, it flourishes as a normal, even enjoyable part of living day to day. When embraced as a wonderful gift of love and created in the true sense of collaboration, fully giving and fully receiving, where two people give it all they have to it, letting all expectations and restraints flee out of the relational window, making love in this larger sense becomes a sacred act, one that fulfills on the deepest level of being. Under these conditions, even the simplest form of love making transforms into eros with a capital E, our ultimate example of oneness between two lovers. In this context, the sex act itself becomes simply one more sacred demonstration of making love, of being a lover. Just like making dinner for another, or picking up the other person's laundry at the dry cleaners, hugging at the ankles and knees at bedtime, or catching one another's loving glance while passing the raspberry jam over brunch in front of a glowing fire on a frosty weekend morning. It is eros in the human heart that transforms effing into effing with a capital F, transforming momentary vulgarity into a sacred act of making or creating love, of being love, moment by moment, day by day. The billing and the cooing, this is a story of stroking one another through life's moments, of caring enough about another to invest one's unbridled love with him or her. It is lavishing love on one another for their benefit, because it's important to be lavished upon, at the very least because it says one is worthy of being lavished. But such treatment also rewards, in fact, greatly nourishes the giver as well. For when we are allowed, privileged, whatever, to give love in such dimensions, especially when we are allowed to lavish love on another, we are fulfilled in the most profound manner. And we come to love in such lavishness. As we come to love in such lavishness, we become supreme lovers in our own right. This is what it means to be a lover of the first order, of making love all day, of being love, each in our own way. It's no wonder that most want this job. We are made in love's image so we too can experience eros in its deeper meaning. So we too can lavish and be lavished upon. So we could at last be lovers of the first order without limitation. When we are, and thus our lives, and when we are, we and thus our lives become nothing but eros. If only we could get out of our own way and stop taking ourselves so seriously, and forget most everything anyone ever taught us about making love. So that's my pigeon story, like it or not. As I relive it now, I'm feeling energy course over the top of my crown chakra. It was a very deep story for me, and one that has great meaning in my life as I try to live as I've been created to live, to be loved in every way I can. So, as you know, I like to end stories with a little something from where I've quote that I have found on the internet. Here's one. It's from a collection called Word Porn. Word Porn. Trying to hurt me by bringing up my past is like trying to rob my old house. I don't live there anymore. That ain't my stuff. I think that's very clever. I'll read it again. Trying to hurt me by bringing up my past is like trying to rob my old house. I don't live there anymore. That ain't my stuff. And so it is, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks again for being here. I thoroughly enjoy being with you each week. I can feel your energy on the other end of these these stories, and I enjoy it thoroughly. And so until next week, when the last story from Thanks for the Yellow Roses will be read to you, just remember that these can be captured on your telephone and on your computer, wherever. They become an audio book unto yourself, and it's all free. It's my gift to you, After all, these stories have been lent to me. These words have been lent to me. I give them to you in the same loan, free of charge. You deserve nothing more, nothing less. And so here we are, dear friends. Have a wonderful week. Namaste. I love you.